Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be featuring a ship that, well, a lot of people generally tend to not really enjoy. And that is the Rune, the Tier 9 Tech Tree German cruiser. It sits a bit awkwardly right before the Hindenburg, but however it does not have the great DPM of the Hindenburg. And if you look at the matchmaking, well, it's a full tier 9 game with Georgia, Lion, FDG, Izumo, Sovietsky, Soyuz. Now the issue here is that, well, all the battleships have 406mm guns or larger, all 5 of them. And this is an issue for the Rune because, well, the Hindenburg has that nice 30mm plating, which means that the Hindenburg can actually angle against a lot of the AP, and that's why there are these new non-conceal builds that you might have been seeing around, where you basically intentionally sabotage your own concealment to increase your damage. However, I never even considered it. Well, I considered it for the Rune, but then I decided no. There's just no way. Because the Rune is far squishier. The Rune is coated in 27mm of plating, and as this is a good example, I'm not even up tiered, it's the same tier, yet every single battleship here overmatches my armor, which means I cannot effectively angle against any of them. And when I say every part of your armor, I mean the upper belt, the huge upper belt is all 27, the deck armor is 27, bow and stern is 27, and the Rune Citadel is not particularly well protected. So I actually build concealment. Standard concealment, which gives me 11.3 kilometers of concealment. I push up to the cap, but you can see, if you see the dotted circle on the minimap, I'm actually making sure that my detection stays outside of that northern edge of the cap, because that's where DDs sit. They sit right at the edge of the cap, they enter the cap, and then they kind of sit there and secure it. So I want to be as close as possible to support my team with gunpowder, but at the same time, you see how I'm angled away, and I'm sitting right at this edge where I know I won't be detected. Changmu gets spotted, and I'm basically at the perfect range. I switch to Torps in between to see what he's doing, and I do manage to get 4 hits in. German HE, of course, doesn't have the highest alpha. In fact, alpha is fairly weak, but you kind of have this built-in IFHE on these Rune guns, which gives you 51mm of HE pen, and with the build I'm running, I actually have 16% fire chance. So this makes the Rune a rather efficient fire starter, and of course rather efficient at burning down targets. I instantly took a pot shot at the Eger when I saw him. These super cruisers, oh, that was actually a pretty good blind fire on the Changmu, managed to chunk him pretty hard and start a fire, which kept him spotted a bit longer than he might have liked to. As I was speaking of, this new patch, of course, has changed super cruisers. You no longer can spec fire prevention, which means normal cruisers have a much better chance of fighting them with just HE. A bit of foreshadowing there. Managed to land another hit on the Changmu. 14 kilometers away, these fast Rune shells, well, these fast German shells, make it somewhat possible to actually nail the DDs. Getting another hit in, not really getting any big volleys in, but honestly all damage on a DD is great. The Musashi shows up, kind of just bumps straight into me, but luckily I am already undetected, so it's not an issue. You might have noted that my spotter plane already ran out, and that's because I'm actually using one of those new skills called Eye in the Sky, which reduces your spotter plane duration by 50%, but in return also reduces the cooldown by 50% and gives you 2 additional spotter planes. I've actually quite liked this on the Rune, because quite often you push in using your concealment, you start a fight, and then you start kiting away because you can't stay in the fight because the Rune is so squishy. So you start kiting away, and then you can use the spotter plane to increase the range at which you can shoot, which is basically what I'm looking to do here. Ideally, of course, I want to utilize the terrain in any way I can. As we mentioned, Rune cannot take the hits. The only big caliber guns we can angle against is the Eger guns, but all the other battleships overmatch me quite easily. So I'm trying to look for an opportunity to A, harass the Changmu, B, harass all their ships, while C, trying to stay alive. And I'm hoping that by going behind these islands here on the right flank, I might be able to find this opening where I can just shoot without being harassed. The spotter plane is about to come up again, so that's going to give me an opportunity to potentially deal some damage. I'm going to try to glide behind one of these islands, see if I can find an opportunity to go dark. The Eger can't resist taking a pot shot at me, so obviously I instantly take him as the target. The battleship pushes in. You noted that I popped Hydra earlier because I was worried there were preemptive torps coming. The Musashi, however, ignored that and just decided to push in. I'm not entirely sure why. We have 3 caps. We have cap control, we have map control, and the enemy team is kind of sitting in spawn with their most likely dead eyes and stuff. There is literally no benefit to pushing in, but, you know, people tend to do this. Even now in the Deadeye meta, every now and then you get people who just think that, well, surely pushing in is the way to victory. Regardless, I find a position as that I mentioned in my cruiser commentary is a excellent position. I'm able to deal damage with all my guns. I'm able to deal nothing but pure damage while at the same time remaining undetected. This is basically optimal cruiser positioning. If you can deal damage consistently without taking damage, you're positioned well in a cruiser, regardless of what anyone else says. Aegir pushes up, instantly start focusing him. The problem, however, is that the ship that is granting me most of the mission on this flank is this Musashi, and he keeps insisting on pushing in, and he will not last long, especially when you consider there's like 6 ships in their spawn right now, including an Azuma, probably lobbing HE at him, so he will go down very, very quickly indeed, but I'm trying to get as much damage on the Aegir as possible. Focusing on HE, he damage cons, but I instantly start another fire. My Udala decides to, well, he's gonna YOLO in there. Once again, not entirely sure why people do this, but this is very common in World Warships. So the Udala throws away his ship for basically no reason, and by the looks of it, my Musashi will soon follow. So the strong flank that we had here, well, it's gonna start collapsing pretty quickly. You can see they have still all 6 ships alive because, well, they haven't really lost anything on this flank, whereas my team has thrown away 2 ships already. And this is a pretty good sign that, uh-oh, I want to get damage in on Aegir, I want to get damage in here, but this is where I need to start worrying about possible envelopment. I might get stuck in this little corner if they push straight through D. And this threat, this upcoming threat, I recognize it now, means that I'm already going to start abandoning this position. I could potentially sit here for maybe a couple minutes longer just farming, but if I did, there would be no way out of the position. I have to disengage. It seems so tempting, it seems so juicy, but no. This is a poisoned apple, this island now. It was good earlier, now it's becoming a huge issue. I start another fire, this time on the Sovietsky Soyuz, but of course that fast Soviet damage con allows him to damage con it. And I just start kiting away. The goal here is to escape this corner, because this corner has suddenly become a huge threat. And the rune isn't really that fast. I think it does about 34 knots, and it doesn't really handle that well. And there's not a whole lot of space on a map like this to actually disengage. So we need to run, and we need to run for our lives. I'm hoping Desta Jutland will manage to get some torpedoes in, but looks like he's being pushed back as well. The Iowa, on the other hand, who could be playing significantly more aggressive in the spawn, well, he's most likely Deadeye as well, and he's playing it very, very safe. So that means that, as you can see, when everyone gives this much space to the enemy team and throws away a couple of ships, the enemy team suddenly finds themselves emboldened and they start pushing. And this is the part where you usually hopefully my other side is doing really, really well, and maybe they can bail us out, maybe they can send some reinforcements or something, but ultimately you gotta get yourself out of a threat like this. Sovietsky Soyuz, actually giving a fair bit of broadside, so I switched to AP. Sovietsky not the best target in general. Soviet battleships are not the best target to farm with AP because they have so little superstructure and their upper belt is so tanky. But I am running the 5% extra AP damage skill on the rune because, well, if you do get to shoot broadsides, you do have very high alpha on the AP, so buffing it even further with that 5% damage is quite nice if you ask me. And it is forcing him to angle a bit. I guess he didn't like being chunked for about 6k, but ultimately our goal is still to try to disengage as quickly as possible. I'm hoping to maybe pick up this Sovietsky Soyuz. If I pick him up, maybe we can kill the Izuma fast, but the problem is my Seattle, who isn't really taking the same steep angle I am, he's their priority target and he gets melted. And suddenly, you can see from priority target that 3 people are aiming at me, and there's a lot of battleships doing that, which all of them overmatch me. And as I mentioned, that box, that corner, that trap is becoming more and more obvious. I am on the last square. I angle against the Sovietsky Soyuz, doesn't really do much. It just allows me to dodge most of the shells, so I don't take too much damage. Another volley comes in just as I'm turning, but it was mostly blind fire. I had been undetected for some time. If he'd aimed a bit higher, that could have been a big volley, but he aims a bit low. I pop a heal and now I just run. The goal here is to run, 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 run. Hope I can basically get to the line of the Iowa and keep kiting away. Rune does not survive in nose-in fights. Rune does not survive in direct engagement. There's a reason why 2 of the turrets on the Rune are on the stern. You want to be kiting away. You want to be disengaging. You want to be farming them from range. The Iowa, however, manages to nail the Izuma, which gives me an opportunity. Because now it's no longer a 2-ship crossfire trying to kill me, it's just the Sovietsky. If he shoots me, I can angle against him, but now the goal is to kill him as soon as possible. However, that Changmu is still alive, and he actually lands some great torpedoes on my Iowa, and, well, he goes down. And suddenly, I'm in big trouble again. Even worse is that the Sovietsky Soyuz is very, very close to me, and we have no crossfire anymore. My only hope right now is to kill him before he's so close that I can no longer disengage, and those 2 super cruisers that are pushing up, the Eger and the Azuma, can just farm me while I'm trying to kill Sovietsky. Friede Grosse takes a potshot at me. I angle, but once again, it does nothing because of my armor being so poor, and now the Sovietsky has decided to start angling towards me to pick me off. This is terrifying, but I'm looking at the torps from my Östergötland and I decide, you know what, we're gonna keep shooting as much as we can. Maybe he will land a couple of torpedoes and maybe we can survive. We run out of space and we start losing speed. In some ships you can border hump very well and survive, but in the Rune you actually don't want to do it. Because the benefits of border humping is that you can keep your ship angled against the target, which works great if you have good armor, because then you can bounce the AP. But as you can see, I can't bounce any of the AP he's shooting at me, so he's just overmatching me, and so all this border is really doing is slowing me down and making me a better target. Rune is one of the poorest, any sort of border humping ships. Just extremely vulnerable and should absolutely not be in this case. Surprisingly, the Jutland actually starts shooting the Sovietsky, which is absolute insanity, but that gives me time to deal some extra damage, and Alaska shows up to help us out. And we manage to kill the Sovietsky without being deleted. I zoom in, see what kind of ammo it is. It's HE, not AP, so I keep trying to turn. I need to get off this border, and I need to regain my speed. I stop shooting, and luckily, because I'm not running concealment build, and luckily because I don't get a fire on me from the Azuma, I manage to remain undetected, and we keep disengaging, we keep kiting away. There's this thing where some ships, like a battleship on a border, for example, can be really, really rough to deal with because he can always keep himself angled. But something like a Rune, which is just a huge clumsy target, if it loses that speed on the border, especially at that range, you just become such an easy target. So you don't really, really want to do it. You're kind of forced to do it just because you want to stay alive. I'm waiting for my heal to come up, waiting for the Azuma to potentially give a bit more broadside, and we're gonna start picking a fight. More importantly, the Eger appears to be disengaging, so we're gonna try to get some damage in. He gives a lot of broadside, so obviously we use that improved AP. I say improved because we're running a skill for a bit of extra damage, and we just start lobbing AP at him as much as we can. You have a much better chance of fighting. Well, we can't get citadels on him, sadly, not enough penetration, we get shatters. You have a much better chance of fighting him. That ruined Eger did a pretty sneaky move there. The Eger shot while behind the island, so we never actually saw him when he shot. And he could have potentially gotten some good citadels in on me. He does delete my Östergötland, which is very, very worrying, because now, well, I'm stuck spamming HE at an Azuma. Not the worst situation, because I do burn him quite well, since they don't have fire prevention now, but the Eger can potentially shoot me at any point. I'm just hoping that the Alaska will maintain his angling and stay alive as long as possible, because this needs to be a 2 versus 2, and not me trying to survive against both of them alone. Meanwhile, my team on the other flank has pushed into the enemy spawn. Oh, and Alaska gets himself killed, and if you look at my Benham, he's sailing around in the enemy spawn chasing them. So that's really no help at all. And I end up in the exact situation I didn't want to be, and that is 1 versus 2 against 2 super cruisers, the Azuma and the Eger. I maintain my angling, keeping an eye on the minimap, so if I see the Eger shoot, like he popped up now, I can angle away to dodge most of his shells. More shells are incoming. I'm already angled. I'm keeping an eye out on the minimap. Whenever the Aegir shoots, he gets spotted, and that gives me a bit of warning of the incoming volley. In the meantime, I'm just trying to get as much damage into this Azuma as possible, and I'm trying to burn him down. I'm popping my heals basically on cooldown the second they come up. I pop them. And I really need to get some fires to kill this Azuma, because while I'm having no issues pinning his armor, I'm struggling to get the fires that I need to actually burn him to death. Once again, we're stuck in the same problem. I can't turn the other way because the Aegir is keeping me locked with that hard-hitting AP, and he will absolutely devastate me if I turn that way. So we are being forced towards the border, and I'm trying to slow down. I'm trying to avoid it because there's also an island in front of me, and I don't want to ground. If I ground, I'm a stationary target, which makes me even easier to kill. Trying to avoid sacrificing your mobility whenever possible. I get the warning. I'm trying to dodge the island while at the same time dodge the incoming Aegir shells. Azuma, he took a bit longer with that reload, so I expected him to shoot AP, which he did, and I managed to angle against it. That was a mistake from him. He should have full focused HE on me, but I did manage to bait him by giving a bit extra broadside. Now I try to juke by reversing and hopefully pick up this Azuma ASAP. I think he's going to die, but he damaged cons, which is the worst case scenario, and he also pops the heal. I think I should have loaded AP in that situation to potentially pick up the kill, but it's too late now. I already have HE loaded, and I'm trying to get as much damage in as possible. Azuma dies. Now, obviously, if I was running Gunther Lutyens, this game would be a lot better, but I was running the Rune, the Weeb Captain, because one of my viewers wanted me to. Double fire, I instantly damage con. Note that I've saved my damage con because you cannot allow double fires to burn in a cruiser versus cruiser fight. I managed to get some hits in on the Aegir, hoping to get those fires in, trying to angle, trying to avoid. I turn left away from the island, barely managing to dodge grounding, and I'm once again kiting my way towards the border. We're close to grounding, cannot allow it. My last heal is keeping me alive. I get a fire, and I barely manage to dodge the island. My team has all died. I've actually been in a 1 versus 5 ever since I was fighting the Azuma, and at this point I'm in a 1 versus 4. I managed to glide all the way to the border while dodging his shells. I still have 2 fires ticking though, and if he lands any good hits I will absolutely die, and I need to kill him with this next volley. I managed to dodge that 1 volley by gliding on the border slightly to the left, but once again my speed is plummeting and I'm a sitting duck, but I finally get the fire and I pick up the kill. That is the Aegir dead. And by burning him to death, and by having, well, basically surviving with 1023 health and no more heals remaining, by us holding the cap advantage for this long, there is actually no way that they can win without killing me. And I recognize this. I need to get off the border. Once again, stuck on the border this game. This has been the story of this game, being basically bullied into this corner over and over again, with really nothing you can do about it. And I realized that the only way they can win this is by getting shots in on me or killing me, and the last place they've been seen is in their spawn and A, so I just start kiting down the J line, running away, running towards the 10 line, basically the bottom right corner. And with 1 minute 20 seconds, the time is not enough for them. They try to crawl it back, but they do not manage to. Somewhat amusingly, some of you guys can maybe translate some of the things they say in chat, but chat is basically filled with a lot of pluses. They gave me a bunch of compliments after this game, because this game actually ended up being a solo warrior game. I was alone versus 5 ships, but managed to kill 2 of them and turn it into a win for the team. Arsonist, Dreadnought, Solo Warrior, and High Caliber, 210,000 damage. This was an example of the importance of just staying alive. Survival for the team. Only 2 kills, but those 2 kills were on the 2 super cruisers who had me pincered in from 2 different sides. If the Aegir had played more aggressive and closed me in, or if the Azuma had basically just rushed loading HE, because his HE, once again, doesn't care about my armor. Just basically brute forced me with damage. They would have probably won that game. But they were both a bit too hesitant to actually pounce and secure the kill, and that allowed me to whittle them down by just using HE against both of them. This game is especially relevant now because it shows how much more vulnerable these super cruisers are to HE after this patch. With the old patch and fire prevention, I would have absolutely no chance against probably either of them, or certainly not both of them. Team score wise, 2,600. Benham got 2,200. I would have commended him a bit more if he hadn't been sailing around in the enemy spawn. Luckily he did distract their DDs long enough that they couldn't just show up and shoot me once to secure their team the win. Detailed report wise, well, it's pretty amusing actually. My damage received here is 88,000. What is interesting is the theoretical maximum. That is, if you absolutely play it perfectly, you use every heal to the absolute perfection. You basically heal every point of damage that you can possibly take, and you take every point of damage that you possibly can. The maximum damage that you can take is about 90,000. I think it was 90,080 or something similar. Or was it 91,000? It's basically right around the border. So we were roughly 2,000-3,000 away from the, and I still had 1,000 left. So our healing this game was actually exemplary in that sense, that it allowed us to survive with the slimmest, absolute slimmest of margins. 2.3 million potential damage as well. A full 20-minute game. Don't see those too many nowadays. The AP, well, when we did use it, it did give us some good damage, but mostly it was the HE and the fires that carried this game through. I can show you guys my recommended build, and generally on kiting ships that don't run RPF. There's not too many, like there's ships that don't run RPF and ships that just want to maintain this distance and want to have the ability to disengage. This build seems to work pretty well on them. I will be making a I will be posting some captain build commentaries quite soon, like generalized. Here's one for battleships, going through them. Here's one for cruisers, and here's one for DDs, because I have been testing long enough that I'm pretty confident in the recommendations that I will give. Anyways, let's move on to the captain build. Right, as always, starting with the equipment, I am actually running the Spotting Aircraft Mod 1, which gives you additional spotting aircraft time. This works whether you want Eye in the Sky or not. It's just such an easy buff, great buff for the rune, because if you run the reload mod like I do, the main battery mod 3, then having that spotting range is quite important because your base range is only 17.8. Hydro duration, better dispersion, better rudder shift, and finally concealment mod 1, because, well, you do try to play as stealthy as possible. Hydro and spotter plane. Commander wise, if you have Lutyens, he's obviously far better, and he would have made that last game so much easier for me. But for any other captain, the order of priority is last stand first, because Rune, I think, tended to lose rudder and engine and rudder quite easily. It didn't actually happen that game, so I'm not entirely convinced how needed it was. Hipper at least tended to lose engine a lot. So last stand is a bit of a, I guess, remnant from the tier 8. The Hindenburg doesn't really need it much, but it's quite nice to have. At least on the tier 8. I'm not sure about the Rune anymore. Back in the day I remember losing rudder on it a lot. These days, questionable. Regardless, if you don't go last stand, you can always go grease the gears, which gives you a bit better turret traverse. Honestly, neither skill is that good on Rune, but there's not really a whole lot of good single pointers left for cruisers anymore. I do love priority target, and I follow it up with Adrenaline Rush and Concealment Expert. That would be my 10-point build. After that, I would probably add Superintendent, new additional heal, and then I would most likely add the Heavy AP Shells skill, which increases your damage. This would be the 16-point build. At this point, you have the option of either adding Eye in the Sky or better fire chance. The 1% fire chance isn't really that impressive, but it is extra damage. Eye in the Sky, on the other hand, well, you do lose consumable action time, but you gain 2 of them, and basically you gain better uptime in return. Personally, I'd probably go Eye in the Sky for the 18th, and then maybe Pyrotechnician for, let's say, 1920. and then the last point into either one of these. Overall though, this build works honestly really well just with the base build, which is honestly just priority AR concealment. That's really all Rune needs. And then a bit of survivability, a bit of damage, and Rune does pretty okay. Still not a particularly good ship. The big issue is, as I mentioned, the complete lack of armor, the fact that it is a huge ship as well, and the fact that the rudder shift and the turning circle isn't exactly stellar, and neither is the speed. And God forbid if someone starts dropping you because your AA range is only 5.2 kilometers. Rune has its fair shares of weaknesses when it comes to sheer tanking and survivability, and that's why you always have to play it at mid to long range. You have to keep your distance, because that is really the only way you can effectively carry a match. I mean, of course there are the ones in 50 game situations where you actually get the YOLO in and you get to use all your torpedoes and everyone gives you broadside and then you get citadels with that German AP. It happens, but I mean, let's be honest, especially in the current meta, you should absolutely not be expecting those games. Rune is a mid to long range cruiser. That's just the way you play it. Anyway, I will be showcasing, or I will be making some vids on the captain builds in the very near future. I've been putting it off long enough, but I did want to get something different from all those Deadeye vids lately, and I thought what is it called? I forgot the name of the skill. Solo Warrior game would be something spicy in between. I will talk to you guys next time. As always, thank you for the support and stay tuned for more vids.